West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Joining me now is Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former personal attorney. He's the host of the Mea Culpa podcast. He's the author of Disloyal, a memoir, and a brand new book called Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the Department of Justice Against His Critics. The book comes out October 11th. I'm going to have Michael on to talk about it, but I have to read the book, right? So it's in here, but I can't show it to you. Next week, I will show it to you. Michael Cohen, you said on Nicole's show, you said to me on this show some time ago that he's hanging on to stuff for leverage. And now all of a sudden this reporting.
Listen, I wish people would have listened to me going back to 2018 when I testified before the House Oversight Committee hearing. Not too many days ago, I actually had breakfast with Representative Carolyn Meloni, and we were discussing the letter that she had sent to NARA on exactly this.
NARA's the archives.
Yes, the archives, National Archives. She wanted NARA to send a letter to Donald Trump demanding, under oath and pursuant to the penalties of perjury, that he is not in possession of any more documents, that he doesn't know of the existence of any more documents outside of NARA, as well as that he had not provided any documents to anybody else for obvious national security reasons. Good for her. You know, she did the right thing. Hopefully they sent it. I'm sure he will ignore it, to which, you know, I believe that the House Oversight Committee will probably send the same letter to him demanding that he do it.
So the audience might be saying, all right, letters here, letters there. But actually, the point here is under oath. Get him to swear under oath that he has done this, because then if anything is discovered that is contrary to what he says, that would be a federal crime.
Absolutely. There would be a 1001 violation of lying to Congress. I know a little about that.
Let's talk a little bit about the way, if anybody thinks there are more documents, that they get this, right? I mean, they went into Mar-a-Lago. They had a search warrant. It had to be, a judge had to sign off on it. What do they do now? There seems to be some reporting now that the Justice Department thinks or says they don't have all the stuff. How does this process work, as far as you know?
Yeah, so this whole issue is just absolutely crazy. The fact that we have to sit there and we have to play this game with a former president of the United States. I want my documents back. Well, he's not entitled to them. First and foremost, they're not his. Second of all, we know that he has more documents. And they know that because in the file folder, it would specifically state the number of documents in them. Well, there's obviously more that are out there. On top of that, we should find out whether or not he photocopied any of the documents as well. But now he's playing the art of the deal, which, by the way, he didn't write that book anyway. But he's playing the art of the deal where I'll trade you this for that.
Right, which is unheard of.
This is beyond unheard of. Ali, if this was you, certainly if it was me, right, we would be in jail in 24 hours. The fact that they're placating him only gives him the belief that he has more power than what he originally does. And think about what he's asking. He wants, I'll trade you this top secret information, but I want information on the Russian investigation. Well, here's a little It's a little side note for Donald, who I hope is watching the program today. You were the president of the United States for 4 years. You had your lapdogs from Jeff Sessions to Attorney General Bill Barr in there. You're going to tell me you could have gotten them then? Yeah. Of course you could have. You're the president. Hell, you could declassify stuff just by thinking it. Imagine if you actually gave an offer. Right. You gave us, a demand to your lapdog, Attorney General Bill Barr, go get me every single document. He could have done that.
You were in his orbit when the documents he's looking for about the campaign. You were still in his orbit at the time.
I was never part of the campaign, which is what kind of makes the whole campaign finance thing also fugazi. On top of that, you'll read in the book Revenge, I never committed tax evasion. I never committed lying to a bank. Lanny Davis went wild when all of this was going on, went on every single television show showing. I'm a guy who's never been audited in my entire life, unlike Trump. I've never not paid taxes. I've never even requested an extension of time. I paid over $5 million in taxes during that time period. And all of this was in the sentencing memo that we provided to Judge William H. Pauley III, who ignored it completely. And the belief, according to at least statements by FBI agents, some that are still in and some that are out, which you'll read in the book, they all knew was a lie. But yet they needed to go ahead and to do this. And then if you think about what recently came out in Berman's book, where he makes the statement that the Attorney General was putting pressure on their office to whitewash Trump or individual number one from any of the statements that I had made and only hold it on tax evasion and then campaign finance, as well as listen, I'm responsible for Stormy Daniels. I take responsibility for that. I'm not responsible for Karen McDougal. That's David Pecker. All you have to do is Google it. But yet I was still charged with it and fined for it.
And by the way, you spent time in jail.
Yes, I did.
Let's talk about what happens here with Donald Trump. It seems he's getting mixed advice from his lawyers, if he can hang on to his lawyers. There's a dominant camp that wants him to take this adversarial posture that we're reporting on. And there's another camp that says, perhaps you shouldn't. He always takes an adversarial posture, right? I mean,
always.
When does he ever not? Do you have any experience of Donald Trump ever saying, all right, you know what, let's just give them the documents and maybe this will end?
No. In fact, during other investigations, he had literally polled almost every single person in the office asking whether or not Alan Garten, who is now the general counsel to the Trump organization, whether or not he should have provided those documents pursuant to subpoena. And when we would all say, yeah, it's pursuant to subpoena, you have to. Not to mention, he didn't want to lose his law license. Nobody did. Right? What ends up happening is he looks for the next guy and the next guy.
You said to me last time you and I talked, the last, everybody wants to be the last voice in Donald Trump's ear.
Yeah, the last voice in Donald's ear owns the conversation, owns the space in between those ears. And so it doesn't matter who that person is, as long as they side with what he wants, his knee-jerk reaction. And it doesn't matter whether that person is real or imaginary. He'll turn around as he does on television and say, I spoke to a very smart guy and he said, that smart guy doesn't exist. It only exists in his mind. It's an alter ego. It's John Bannon.
I got less than a minute left, but I want to ask you about something weird that's been going on at Trump rallies now. They're playing music that sounds very much like the QAnon music, and people are giving some kind of a weird salute with a finger it seems cultish and stuff like that. Go back in your history with him. You've seen him flirt with this stuff over the years. What's happening here?
Okay, if you sat Donald in this chair and asked him to talk to you about QAnon, he couldn't. Why? Because he knows nothing about QAnon. However, what he does know is that they support him, very much like the old statements of David Duke. And he said, I don't know anything about David Duke. Sure you do. Do you know about the Ku Klux Klan, when it was formed, yada, yada? No. He doesn't know when QAnon was formed. Nothing. The problem is he knows that these people support him. And so that's enough for him. And that's all he cares about. He is legitimately a cult leader. He doesn't care about you as an individual. He doesn't care what you stand for, as long as what you stand for is him.
It is Monday, the 10th of October of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. That's right, we had the weekend, and today is, I suppose it's a holiday. Though in this house, we honor indigenous peoples rather than that guy who got hired by Spain to come over here and, well, he did not even know where he was. So you can imagine what would have happened if he had actually landed in India. Yeah. I guess it would have been conquest right now. We're going to get those spices. And why do they have them when we should take them? Take them now. Yeah. Okay. Well, some people have the day off. Some people don't. Some people have school off today. Some people have it off on Friday, I heard. So, how are you? Yes. Trump continues to have his Nazi hate rallies. I don't understand. This guy has all but admitted that he stole actually the actual plans to make a nuke. Yes, over the weekend he said, oh, they planted a book about how to make nukes. Oh, really? They planted it. And he wants it back because it's his. I'm afraid that he still has it. And if he doesn't have it, maybe the Sauds do. You never know. You don't get $2 billion laundered through your son-in-law for, I don't know, your great business acumen. The son-in-law's business acumen. I don't get it. None of us do. But somehow $2 billion went through Jared, and I wonder where it ended up and why. How to make a nuke might be worth $2 billion to an oil oligarchy. Maybe. And Trump's just the guy to sell it to him because, hey, as my maggot brother said years and years and years ago, don't fall in love with anything because everything is for sale. And if you love something, you might not want to sell it. It's always wondered how come he didn't really love our mom. Nah, maybe he does. I don't know. Do I go on about my maggot brother? No, let's not. So, I don't know. Kind of took me off track. I wasn't planning on speaking about my maggot brother, but there he is. And I suppose we all have some member of the family, immediate or distant, that has fallen prey to the swan song, the song of the sirens. Yes, come join us. Join us. All right. And then they got their little Q thing going on. Trump doesn't know anything about Q. Sure he doesn't. Somebody there does because they sure do play the music from Q a lot. And Trump seems to know a little bit about it to at least, I don't know, throw out some entreaties to the Q crowd every now and then. So he has them hooked. Yeah, just like all snake oil salesmen. All right. Oh, should remind you, since it is Indigenous Peoples Day, that snake oil was actually, original snake oil was part of the Indigenous Peoples medicine kit, and it helped with inflammation. And even the Chinese use snake oil, and for the same thing. And then it was stolen by charlatans like the Trumps of the day, to go on these little tent revival tours that were sort of like the, well, shall we say, the sharper image of the day. Oh, yes, we have new remedies, all for you. Until the government had to step in and say, you're poisoning people. You got to stop that. They go, no, regulations. What? This is socialism. They never said that back then, but if they had an opportunity to, they would have. And they would have. Okay, I read an article about how for the first time since Reagan was in office, that Oregon may get a Republican governor. Now, there was some sort of fact finding that our Democratic candidate had tried to color Drazen, the Republican candidate, as being part of the extremists that stormed the Capitol. And they said, oh, she shows no fealty to that. And she hasn't said that Trump's election in Oregon was illegitimate. Now, she did say that it was illegitimate elsewhere, just not in Oregon. And I don't know what that was about, but we know how they like to parse their words. And I have to say, no matter what these facts supposedly are, that she's not part of the extremists. If she's a Republican, she is an extremist by definition. That party has embraced everything that is fascist. And I mean everything. You got Tuberville out there saying, oh, the only reason blacks want reparations is because they're criminals and they want to take your stuff. You got Kanye West, how do you say his name? Spouting off anti-Semitic sentiments. And we have a story of Donald Trump giving a little howdy to fascists in Spain. He wasn't the only one. Had a slew of other fascists there saying howdy. So one of the polling results, apparently, or pollsters or analysts, actually it's analysts, who say one of the reasons that the Democratic candidate isn't polling so well is because of Joe Biden's unpopularity. And I'm thinking, why is he unpopular? He was made so. It isn't certainly from all the great things that he's done. Do we get to hear about them? No, they're denigrated every step of the way. I remember how the media treated Trump. They kept saying, this is the day he becomes presidential. And he never got anything done. Worst job record. He went out. Now, granted, there was a pandemic, but, he could have done things like not fired people from the CDC that would be taking care of pandemics. Kind of makes you wonder what he knew, since he was stealing state secrets right and left. Only president in our history who left office with less jobs than when he came in. And somehow Joe Biden is the failure. Got unemployment down to below 4%, about, hovering around 3%. Back in the day, I don't know, that used to be okay. Worldwide events that impact our economy somehow are blamed on Joe Biden and not reported that this is happening everywhere. Got CNN, new buyer says, this place is way too liberal. You're reporting the other side too much. What other side? You mean the truth side? The facts, ma'am? Too much of those, huh? Well, I guess that's what the people want. They get a chance to choose whether they want the ballot box or a box of bullets. So when journalists, newspaper editorial boards dragged Kotek, the Democratic candidate for governor here in Oregon, for calling Drazen, the Republican candidate, an extremist, she's a Republican. I suppose back in the day, in the Weimar Republic, journalists of the day said, you can't call these Nazis bad people. They're just trying to get elected. Yeah, they are. Seems like history does repeat, if not resonate. Okay, Well, we might as well get into or out of the rant mode and into the more ordered part of this salon we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Because in the Bistro Cafe, we do have some items, morsels, tidbits of nourishment for your, your pleasure here. And what are they? Well, at the top, Michael Cohen put it out there that placating Trump's behavior only emboldens him. But we already knew that, didn't we? Mm-hmm. On the rest of the menu, Michigan's GOP statewide candidates stick to their batshit crazy. I'm not going to say it so much in the morning. I do have some asterisks for the IT. Okay? Well, they stick to their batshit crazy far-right messaging. Seems like they're doing that everywhere, aren't they? A federal judge won't block the January 6 panel subpoena for Arizona GOP Chair Kelli Ward's phone records. And Giorgia prosecutor Fanni Willis is seeking to compel testimony from former U.S. House Speaker Newt Gingrich and former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. I would have just called them traitors to save space. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Austria's liberal president is set to win a second 6-year term without a runoff vote. And Donald Trump backed Spain's fascists in a video shown at a rally in Madrid that also included messages from Italy's Giorgia Meloni and Hungary's Viktor Orban. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link across the page, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could send us, what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance, we are able to, if you send that to us once a month, we're able to pool those dollars with other folks of like-mindedness, and then we're able to put a big dent in paying our bills. And we find that if we pay our bills, we're able to fly under the radar and continue this powerhouse of resistance against dark forces arrayed not only against representative democracy here in the United States of America, but around the world. It is a worldwide effort to, destroy everything good. Yes, absolutely good. We don't want that to happen, and we're not going to allow it. And we thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many, many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so by going to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. You can also follow me on Twitter. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. And, of course, that's where the real reportage is, if not really the full article. Or maybe the article without stuff added on, which we like to do here. Anyway, the show notes and links can be found by following me on Twitter, and you can find those show notes and links there in the timeline. They're all there. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. All right. Oh, and I should not forget to remind folks that the deep archive of the Netroots Radio Library from the past 11 plus years can be found at the Internet Archive at archive.org. Indeed. Okay. Let's look into, or tuck into, as we like to say here, into this first offering in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Joey Capoletti of the Associated Press brings us this offering. With voting underway in Michigan's general election, the Republican nominee for Secretary of State stepped on stage as a warm-up act for Donald Trump and hit hard on the main theme of her campaign. Christina Caramo repeated unfounded assertions about the 2020 presidential election that have been repeatedly debunked. You know, about 63, 64 court cases, all lost. She told the crowd at the recent rally at Macomb Community College that authoritarians are giving millions to her Democratic opponent. Notice how they always say what's happening to them. And her opponent is Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson in an attempt to corrupt battleground state election systems so they can control America with representative democracy in which people have freedom of speech and rights like bodily autonomy. We're so authoritarian. We kick out our people like Al Franken for faking he was going to fondle a starless breast on a USO tour decades before he became a senator. That's how authoritarian we are. We just want to control. And we kick out the people that would really help us control the scene. Why do we do that? Because we have morals? She goes on. If you look at history, it shows what tyrants do, said Caramo, a former community college professor. History is telling us, history is screaming to us that if we don't step up and fight now, we will lose the greatest country in human history. It was an address designed to rev up the crowd of devoted Trump followers, some of whom have lashed on to the baseless QAnon conspiracy theory, while Caramo's speech drew cheers, relying on a general election strategy that appeals to the most far-right voters as a gamble for Michigan Republicans. And that's why I say people like Drazen here in Oregon, by dint of the fact that she is running as a Republican and has not, I repeat, has not distanced herself from these bat-doodoo crazy sentiments. She is an extremist like all the rest of the Republican Party is now. Back to the article at hand. Candidates who have to play to their party's base during primaries or nominating conventions often shift toward the center, aiming to attract more voters for the general election, but that has not happened this year for the Republicans seeking Michigan's top three statewide offices: governor, attorney general, and secretary of state. The November 8 election will test whether campaigns designed to resonate with the far right and highlight strong ties to Trump will be enough to win in a traditional swing state where the Republican incumbent lost the White House to Democratic challenger Joe Biden by more than 154,000 votes in 2020. And this is why I don't understand. Trump is one of the most unpopular presidents in the history of our presidential history. And they're saying that Joe Biden is a drag on Democratic candidates because of how unpopular he is. That is made up. Joe would pull a lot more popular if people were actually made aware of his great accomplishments And yeah, I know the complaint is that he has a messaging problem, and I know he has a messaging problem. The media just will not convey the message. All three GOP candidates stood behind Trump during the October 1 rally at the college about 20 miles north of Detroit, joined by Marjorie Taylor Greene and MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, who has amplified Trump's election falsehoods to audiences across the country. Michigan-based pollster Bernie Porn said the Republican candidates have been defined by their extreme stances, but that none has attracted enough money to get on TV and introduce themselves to a broader swath of voters. That, he said, makes it difficult for folks to form a favorable opinion of you, and let us hope that we keep favorable opinions about Nazis from being favorable. Bob Christie of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. A federal judge in Phoenix on Friday refused to put on hold her order requiring phone records of the Arizona Republican Party leader to be turned over to the House committee investigating the January 6, 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol pending an appeal. U.S. District Judge Diane Humatewa said State GOP Chair Kelli Ward had failed to show that she would suffer irreparable harm if congressional investigators came for the records, and she again rejected Ward's claims that her First Amendment rights would be chilled if investigators were able to learn whom she spoke with while trying to challenge Trump's 2020 election defeat. Humatawa said she found Ward's alleged concerns speculative and, in light of disclosures made during oral argument, dubious. She noted that Ward's lawyers pointed out at a Tuesday hearing that she had written a book about sending an alternative slate of fake presidential electors to Congress and filmed multiple videos of her actions and posted them on YouTube. These actions belie Ms. Ward's concern that her communications with her constituents or colleagues will be chilled by the phone company's possible disclosure of who she spoke with during that time, the judge wrote. The House committee investigating the Capitol attack is seeking phone records from just before the November 2020 election to January 31st of 2021. That would include a period when Ward was pushing for Trump's election defeat to be overturned, and Congress was set to certify the results in favor of Democratic Joe Biden. Kelli Ward and her husband Michael Ward were presidential electors who would have voted for Trump in the Electoral College had he won Arizona. Both signed a document falsely claiming they were Arizona's true electors, despite Biden winning the state. During Tuesday's hearing, the attorney representing the congressional committee noted that Kelli Ward had refused to answer questions during a deposition, citing her Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate herself. Ward's attorney urged the judge to briefly block the subpoena while her appeal is pending, but the judge noted that the appeals court won't get the case until after the committee must dissolve when the current Congress ends on January 3rd of 2023. Ward is a staunch Trump ally who has aggressively promoted the false claim that the election was stolen from him. In the days after the election, She pressured Republicans on the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors to investigate unsupported claims of fraud before election results were certified, according to text messages released by the county. Kate Brumback of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Giorgia prosecutor investigating whether then President Donald Trump and others illegally tried to interfere in the 2020 election filed paperwork seeking to compel testimony from a new batch of Trump allies, including former House Speaker Newt Gingrich and former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Fulton County District Attorney Fanni Willis filed petitions in court seeking to have Gingrich and Flynn, as well as former White House lawyer Eric Hirschman and others, to testify next month before a special grand jury that's been seated to aid her investigation. They join a string of other high-profile Trump allies and advisors who have been called to testify in the probe. Rudy Giuliani, who's been told he could face criminal charges in the probe, testified in August. Attorneys John Eastman and Kenneth Chesebro have also appeared before the panel. Lindsey Graham's attempt to fight his subpoena is pending in a federal appeals court, and paperwork has been filed seeking testimony from others, including former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Flynn did not immediately respond to an email and phone messages seeking comment, and his lawyer did not immediately return an email seeking comment. Gingrich referred questions to his attorney, who declined to comment, and Hirschman could not immediately be reached. Willis has said she plans to take a month-long break from public activity in the case leading up to the November midterm election, which is 1 month from Saturday. Each of the petitions filed last Friday seeks to have the potential witnesses appear in November after the election, but the process for securing testimony from out-of-state witnesses sometimes takes a while. So it appears Willis is putting the wheels in motion for activity to resume after her self-imposed pause. Compelling testimony from witnesses who don't live in Giorgia requires Willis to use a process that involves getting judges in the states where they live to order them to appear. The petitions she filed on Friday are essentially precursors to subpoenas. Well, let us now go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You were listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, everything isn't just fine. Don't Worry Darling suffers from an identity problem. It's trying to be too many things at once. A social commentary, a psychological thriller, and perhaps worst of all, a vehicle for pop star Harry Styles to show that he is leading man material. Unfortunately, it falls short on the first two and really misses the mark on the last. In the second directorial offering from Olivia Wilde, Don't Worry Darling tells the tale of Alice, played by Florence Pugh, and Jack, Harry Styles, a married couple living in the aptly named planned community of Victory, which is located in the middle of the California desert. Based on the homes, cars, and clothing, the setting appears to be the 1950s. However, the racial diversity and openness with regards to sexual matters sort of suggests otherwise. In fact, nothing is what it appears to be, and somehow Victory's founder, Frank, a powerful Chris Pine, who also happens to be the employer for all of Victory's male residents, is at the center of it all. Much like the Alice who found herself falling down a rabbit hole, this Alice too finds herself down such a hole, only what she finds is far from Wonderland. Without spoilers, the plot twist in this one can be finessed pretty early on. The cinematography and production design are spot on here, but Wilde still new at this directing thing, and the script's social commentary is often so heavy that it feels like you're being hit over the head with a pan from Alice's well-stocked kitchen. Don't Worry Darling benefits from strong performances by Pugh and Pine, who offer the only glimpses of chemistry between anyone in this movie, as well as some neat visual stylings. Sadly, though, that's not quite enough to save it. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Fiona Samuels. The red wolf once roamed a huge swath of the eastern United States. The historic range of these rust-colored canines stretched from Long Island across to Missouri and down to the Texas-Mexico border. But by 1972, the population was reduced to only roaming a small area along the Gulf Coast due to habitat loss and hunting. To conserve the species, 14 individuals were captured as part of a breeding program. In 1980, their wild relatives were declared extinct. The captured wolves were all that was left.
The species has gone through this huge bottleneck, and through that lost a lot of genetic variation, and now there's a fair amount of inbreeding in the species because you can't help it when you have so few founders.
That's Kristen Bresky, an assistant professor at Michigan Technological University whose research focuses on the conservation of genetics of wild animal populations.
I think what captures the imagination with the red wolf, and I think this work, is it's been the underdog. It's been the underdog scientifically. It's been the underdog for conservation. It was, all wolves were heavily persecuted, but the red wolves were heavily persecuted to the point that only 14 were left.
Now, Bresky and her collaborators have found a surprising new pool of red wolf genes that might help bring more diversity to the tiny population. Ghost alleles in wild coyote populations. Alleles are the parts of chromosomes that encode specific genetic traits. Just like humans, canines inherit one allele from each parent for a certain gene. But why are these called ghost alleles?
So the ghost part is the red wolves are gone, and we presumed they took all of their genes with them. But what we also have to remember is when a population is dying out, it might find the best mate is the next closest related species. So a red wolf and a coyote can have offspring. Maybe the red wolf dies because that's what's been happening for red wolves. But all of those genes that it just passed on to its coyote hybrid offspring now get to circulate, and we've rediscovered those.
Bridget von Holt, who you just heard, is a collaborator working with Bresky. Together, they found that some coyote populations in Louisiana and Texas, who were protected from hunting, still retain huge amounts of red wolf genes. Some individuals are almost 60% wolf. As red wolves are released back into the wild, breeding with these coyotes could help the critically endangered species regain some of its genetic diversity. That's almost like going back in time and undoing the genetic bottleneck from 1980, making the new red wolf population more genetically diverse.
This would be kind of the opposite direction, taking the small, isolated, inbred population from the captive breeding program, but still has red wolf genes that are so critical, and put them into a wild landscape with new genetic variation that they haven't seen for 50 years or more. And all of a sudden, hopefully this is like a super mix of genetic health and sort of a rebound that these animals can be wild and be themselves again.
The next steps will include how to release red wolves in a way that takes advantage of the ghost alleles hiding in the coyote populations. Like with other wolf releasing efforts, there might be some pushback.
There will be controversy. There will be people who aren't happy, but there are people that are and are incredibly supportive. And I think also at the end of the day, there's a philosophy that we created this problem. We're responsible for fixing it.
For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Fiona Samuels.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. After a storm or disaster, it's important to eat only safe food. Throw away perishables like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and leftovers stored above 40 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours or more. Throw away food with an unusual odor, color, or texture. Throw away food that may have come in contact with floodwater, including food in swollen, punctured, and damaged cans. When in doubt, throw it out.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. Vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
Are more books being banned, and which ones? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. According to a new report from the American Library Association, there has been, across the country, a marked escalation in the efforts to ban books. Some libraries have been threatened with loss of funding if they didn't remove certain titles. Some librarians have been accused of distributing graphic pornography, and police reports have been filed based on the books on the shelves. Most of the attacks focus on books with LGBTQ or black characters. Maya Kobe's memoir, Genderqueer, appears to be one of, if not the, most frequently targeted books in the country. The New York Times quotes the Library Association's director of the Office of Intellectual Freedom as saying, quote, "We're truly fearful that at some point we'll see a librarian arrested for providing constitutionally protected books on disfavored topics," which is a testament to this profoundly sad and highly dangerous state of affairs. Public libraries must be able to remain true to their mission. As President Dwight Eisenhower said, "The libraries of America are and must ever remain the home of free and inquiring minds. Everyone is entitled to the clear confidence that there they can freely seek the whole truth, unvarnished by fashion and uncompromised by expediency." Or as President John Kennedy put it, libraries should be open to all, except the censor. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1933. That was the day that 40 armed cotton growers shot at a group of striking workers in the small town of Pixley, California. That year, a wave of labor unrest had swept through the fields of California's agricultural industry. Nearly 50,000 workers participated in strikes throughout the year. The Agricultural Workers' Industrial Union led many of the strikes. The American Federation of Labor also led 2 walkouts. Workers were angry over declining wages and the harsh working conditions of agricultural life. The Depression had slashed wages. Cotton field workers in the San Joaquin Valley had seen their wages cut by as much as 75%. 3/4 of those workers were Mexican. As cotton harvest season neared, the workers organized to strike. They demanded $1 for every 100 pounds of cotton they picked and recognition of their union. The growers offered 60 cents. At the peak of the strike, an estimated 12,000 to 18,000 workers had walked off the job. Anger mounted. Armed growers attacked striking workers, demanding they return to work or leave California. Strike leaders were arrested. In Pixley, the growers formed a Farmers Protective Association. They claimed to have as many as 600 members. Reportedly, one manager of a cotton gin told the farmers, "The time has come for us to take the law into our own hands and drive the strikers from our farms." The simmering tensions boiled over. As highway patrolmen looked on, a band of growers shot into a group of unarmed strikers. At least 2 strikers fell dead. The violence resulted in public outcry and federal intervention. The workers received federal relief, and a mediator helped to settle the strike. And in the settlement, the workers would receive 75 cents per 100 pounds of cotton. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Looks like we're cooling off a tad. We will only be in the mid-80s today, and be mostly sunny skies throughout the day, with winds out of the north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Mostly clear tonight with lows in the low 50s, winds light and variable, and then some clouds in the morning will give way to mainly sunny skies for the afternoon, highs about 84-85, winds light and variable. Ragweed pollen is rated high here in Rogue River itself. The air quality index for the region is moderate at 54 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate at level 4. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.1 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 97%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 61 degrees and fair. Paris is 68 and cloudy. Rome is 75 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 52 and sunny. Kabul is 58 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 75 and fair. Tokyo is 72 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 58 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and cloudy with a small craft advisory on the bay. And New York is 60 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Philip Jenny and Keir Molson of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Austria's liberal president was on course to win a second-year term outright yesterday, Sunday, avoiding a runoff vote after a campaign in which he portrayed himself as the stable option in uncertain times. Preliminary results gave President Alexander Van der Bellen 54.6% of the vote, and his closest rival, far-right Freedom Party candidate Walter Rosenkranz, 19.1%. Campaign posters for the 78-year-old Van der Bellen, who hails from the environmentalist Green Party, but ran as an independent, featured the slogan, "The safe choice in stormy times." Austria has faced repeated political turmoil in recent years. The Alpine country of around 9 million people went through 5 chancellors during Van der Bellen's first term, with government crises given the often largely ceremonial head of state unusually high visibility. There were 7 contenders in Sunday's election, but Van der Bellen had the implicit or explicit backing of Austria's mainstream parties. The Freedom Party was the only party in parliament to field a candidate against him. Van der Bellen said that with the pre-election polls giving him a big lead, he had worried that people would not turn out to vote. The president said Austria faces very uneasy times, with worries about the war in Ukraine, energy supplies and prices, and a potential resurgence of the coronavirus pandemic. In 2016, Van der Bellen beat a more prominent Freedom Party candidate, Norbert Hofer, by about 53.8% to 46.2% in a runoff that was rerun on the orders of Austria's Constitutional Court. There was no sign of any such drama this time. The Freedom Party, which was the junior partner in a coalition government that collapsed in a scandal surrounding its then leader in 2019, had capitalized on inflation and rising energy prices to make modest poll gains in recent months. But Rosenkranz, a lawyer and the former leader of its parliamentary group, did not pose the strong challenge that Hofer did. The remaining 5 candidates, all of whom were seen polling under 10%, included other contenders on the hard right.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Joseph Wilson and Alicia Leon of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump threw his weight behind Spain's far right yesterday, Sunday, in a video shown at a rally in Madrid that also featured messages from leading stars of Europe's populist right like Italy's Meloni and Hungary's Orban. In a recording that lasted under 40 seconds while Trump was on a plane, Trump thanked Spain's far-right Vox party and its leader, Santiago Abascal, for what he called the great job they are doing. Vox captured national attention on Spain's political landscape in 2019 when it became the 3rd largest force in Spain's parliament after an election that led to a national left-wing coalition that still holds power. Vox's messages include zero tolerance for Catalan separatism, disdain for gender equality, diatribes against unauthorized immigration from Africa, and embracing both the reconquista of medieval Spain from Islam as well as the legacy of General Francisco Franco's 20th century dictatorship. Despite its spectacular rise, the party led by Abascal failed to meet the expectations it set for itself in regional contests this year and had suffered its first serious bout of infighting among its leaders. Vox is now eyeing regional and municipal elections next year as it battles to surpass Spain's traditional conservatives. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.